Today I'm going to be talking about the first book that I ever wrote, Chasing Smoke. If you're new here, which you probably are because this is a brand new channel, I am Sarah Evergreen. I am an author. I write fantasy novels. I'm doing a 30-day video a day challenge to get myself back into YouTube after taking a pivot away from my last YouTube channel, Squeaky's Cauldron, which I will link in the show notes. So I wrote Chasing Smoke in November of 2008 for NaNoWriMo. It was the first NaNoWriMo that I had ever taken part of, and it's one of the reasons that I love NaNoWriMo so much, because much like this 30-day challenge to create a video every day, that 30-day challenge, which is to write 50,000 words of fiction in a month, pushed me to do something that I didn't know at the beginning that I could do. And it moved me from, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if this is even possible for me to do, into, oh shit, I did the thing. I actually did the thing. And that was an absolute game changer for me. I've written 6 novels since then, as well as many partial novels. I've participated in NaNoWriMo a number of years, including last year. It's really helped me to be able to embrace the fact that I can write. And I think that any kind of challenge, any kind of practice that you can get into that can shift your identity like that into something that you want to be and want to see yourself as is super valuable. So Chasing Smoke started out as a story of a girl who was troubled with a stepdad, a mom who was pretty negligent, and was going to be sent to boarding school. It got to the point where she was being expelled from her school, and then everything went off the rails. It turned into a book about a road trip and a serial killer and a cult leader dad and falling in love with a random guy who picked her up, and became a much more, I think, healing book than it would have been if I'd stuck to the outline that I had created in the first place. In fact, this book is probably one of the most therapeutic things I've ever done for myself, up to and including therapy. Just getting out so much of the kind of horror of growing up in a family where you aren't understood, where there are things going on underneath the surface that you don't understand, and how that impacts you as you develop into an adult. The crazy ways that that can impact how you view the world, how you view yourself, how you act in the world. I was a pretty rebellious teenager, got really into the punk scene and the goth scene, as well as drugs, and I ran away more than once. And for a very long time, I felt like that was a problem with me, that I was the problem in that scenario. And it wasn't until much later, even after writing this book, really, like this was a good first step, but it wasn't the whole thing. It wasn't until much later that I realized that no, actually, that's more of a problem with the environment rather than the flower that is planted in the environment. So this story has a lot of really good things in it. And it is a first novel. And I want to really stress that. Like this novel came out over the course of 2.5 months in total. It's not the first draft exactly, but it is my very first novel, and as such, like I said, it has some good chunks, but it's also not publishable by any stretch of the imagination. I have toyed with the idea of rewriting it, which I may still, because I don't know, just to like honor that 16-year-old girl who was screaming to get her voice heard, that came through so strongly in this. The reason that I'm saying this is because when you write your first novel, when you write your first novel, it may very well be a steaming pile of absolute garbage. Or, more likely, it's going to be a steaming pile of garbage, but not absolutely. It's going to have jewels in it. It's going to have little gems in it. Beautiful things that are really important for you to have gotten down on the page like this did. And this book is actually missing whole chunks in it. Let me see if I can find what I'm talking about here. There's one part in particular that I'm thinking of where I just wrote insert scene where this character does this thing, and then never went back and inserted the scene, and still got myself a galley copy through CreateSpace, because back in 2008 NaNoWriMo was working with CreateSpace, and one of the rewards of winning was that you'd get this really cool galley copy. And I've got this one, and I've got the one that I wrote in 2009 as a galley copy, which is super cool. Like, being able to hold your book in your own hands, I think it is itself very, well, it's satisfying, obviously, but it does something to kind of lock in that identity shift that I was talking about earlier. Like, I created a physical thing. I made a thing out of nothing, out of my brain hole. And this book was so much fucking fun to write, so much fun to write. I think all of the time that I was writing it, I was working probably, I'd say 3 blocks away from my house. I would literally run home on my lunch breaks so that I could write. I would run home after work so that I could write. And I don't know if I've ever experienced something that lit me up quite that much. And I don't think I've experienced that since then. It was such a revelation writing this book. And like I said, it was completely off the rails of the outline that I had created. I was just pouring myself out into it. And I would really urge you to do the same thing, especially on your first book. Just get whatever weird stuff that's inside of you, outside of you, onto the page. Like, I have this scene in here, one of my favorite scenes, where the main character wakes up in the house of the serial killer that I mentioned, and she looks next to her. She's in the bedroom, and next to the bed is a pile of human hands, just like piled on the floor. Like, what is that? It's bizarre and strange and creepy, and so beautifully spoke to the bizarre, strange, creepy girl that I was in high school, and that I continue to be today. Like, she's definitely in me. And if you check out my other YouTube channel, you can see some of that poking through, and you'll see some of that poking through on this channel as well. The thing I really want to stress here is that the space between 0 and 1 is immensely different than the space between 1 and 2. The space between not ever having done the thing and having done the thing and having to repeat the thing is so different. Get from 0 to 1 in as messy and weird and upsetting a way as possible. Just get away from 0. Because once you're away from 0, you're going to be a different person. You're going to be a person who has written a book. And that's fucking amazing. Do you know how many people who are out there who've told me, oh, I wish I could do that? Bitch, you can. You sit down at the keyboard and you do it. I know it's not as simple as that, but it also is kind of as simple as that. Simple. Not easy necessarily, but definitely simple. You sit down and you do the thing. And I'm a huge proponent of fast drafting. Again, another reason I love NaNoWriMo, because it helps to shut down that critical voice that goes, you can't do this. What are you doing? Why are you doing? And gives a lot more space to just let things flow out. Again, this is also why I'm doing this 30-day video challenge, is so that I can just sit down in front of the camera and say the things. And it can be messy, it can be bad, it can be ugly, it can be weird, it can maybe be creepy. Maybe we'll have some creepy videos. But the point is that I'm sitting down and I'm doing it. I want you to sit down and do it. The most important thing is just doing the work. Everything else Everything else you can learn. Everything else you can tweak in post. You can edit. You can revise. You can rewrite. But until you sit down and actually just put words on paper, you're still in the space of zero, having not done the thing. So do the thing. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please like and subscribe. And as always, use your voice.